music is music, and whether it's solo flute music or orchestra music, it's music. I don't approach one differently than the other, but for me, it's very, very important to play the very best possible music that has ever been written. So I don't approach playing differently, solo and orchestral. To me, music is music.
To begin this project, I started to research what kind of style North American flute players preferred. Top players or future top players that are playing in top orchestras, teaching in university, or their students, their preference, intention, situation of playing, so everything, as many as possible, to hear and feel. I traveled all over North America to get that information.
For me, the head joint is the single most important thing of the instrument, because it's the head joint that allows me to express what I hear in my head. And I need a head joint that is going to be as flexible as possible to let me make the sounds that I hear in my head, which are sounds that not only that I imagine, but sounds that I've heard other flute players make, or other instruments, but most importantly, other singers, the great singers of Western music. These are the sounds that I hear in my head, and I look for a head joint that will let me interpret, if you will, those sounds into the flute.
The most important thing is how players can concentrate on the music, how they can forget about instrument, how they can use the flute as their parts of body. That was base of my thinking. Then my goal was to take that idea into a key for new development, to make a head joint that lets players use it like part of themselves. From low to high register, sound is even more rich and full for more efficient attack with quick passages, proper and quick response, sound flies by themselves like a beam, and so on. For realizing these keywords, most of performance of efficiency of flute is fixed by head joint. That's one reason, and I was concentrated in making a proper embouchure hole and lip plate.
Over the course of the 30 years that I've been playing flute, I've used so many different head joints. And at the time that I played them, they were always the best that I could find. Of course, I would never play on something that wasn't something that I felt was the finest that I could find.
Finally, 36 head joints were made as a prototype. But when Mr. Jeff Kainer tried number 18th head joint, just after he played some notes in a hall, he said, "Good, I like it." From our side, his sound was so full and rich and even, so we decided we can go with this.
So Keisuke and I worked very hard on many different head joints to try to find what would allow me the freedom to do what I really want to do with the instrument. And he has a great talent for analyzing what exactly it is with the head joint that needs to be different in order to produce the sound that I felt and heard. And of course, I have no talent in that way at all. I can't say the hole needs to be bigger or this needs to be more shallow. This is like a mystery to me. But it was a lot of fun for me to experiment with the different options that Keisuke gave me, and to point out to him what I liked about certain head joints. through this process of experimentation and elimination, we finally arrived at this new K head joint. Keisuke and I were in communication over several years, working on head joints, trying different head joints in different places, in small rooms, in big rooms, in the concert hall. I would have a head joint sometimes for several weeks, and I would play it in the orchestra or sometimes on solo performances and even recordings, just so that I could become intimately familiar with the head joint and then help shape the process of developing the K head joint. So it was not difficult for me. For me, it was fun, always having almost like a new toy, a different head joint to play with. So it was a process that I enjoyed very much.
One of the difficulty of making head joint as a product is keeping same shape, same cut with different worker. Because slight difference of their tools or even their habit of cutting make a big difference of sound or playability.
In the past, we had usually started development with a team in Japan who would design our instruments, which we would then send abroad for evaluation. This time, however, staff from Europe and the USA also participated in the project from the start, which was a first for flute development in Yamaha. One of the most difficult problems was that in Europe and the USA, we lacked the facilities needed for development. Normally, we have equipment on hand, which we then use to work through the process of making a particular part of an instrument. This time, we had the instrument, but we had to figure out what equipment we needed to make it. This was the reverse of the normal process we were used to, making it a difficult challenge.
Actually, after the evaluation, a prototype made by Japan came US, which was supposed to be same as number 18, the head joint. But some last touch was different. To make a same head joint with only exchanging actual head joint was tough. So finally, I visited Japan custom shop and we made a great meeting in quite detail. How to cut, which tools shape, where is the point of discard, and so on. From that session, we made some new gauges for controlling the shape, and absolutely all Yamaha handmade head joint are inspected by designer. So now, our new head joint has more stable and even quality.
Actually, we attempted to recreate the based design a couple of times, but we weren't completely successful. Keisuke Tanaka, who works for Yamaha in the US, and Jeff Kaner gave us a little feedback and pointed out slight differences. We started by measuring the bass instrument and continued measuring to get more details, which we had never done before. What's more, we were successful in completing a new gauge to enable us to produce perfectly identical products, reducing our reliance on the intuition of our craftsmen. Developing the tool was also quite a difficult process, and we had to modify it several times. We also added different types of gauges and tools, which were needed to recreate the head joint perfectly. The reproduction took a lot of time. In fact, approximately the same amount of time we needed to develop the head joint.
I'm so happy to have arrived where we did with this head joint.
It was great! In developing this head joint, we acquired a great deal of know-how, that had not been present in our development processes in Japan. We were able to integrate these techniques with the procedures and technologies we had previously been using in Japan. The result was an instrument created using techniques that were entirely new to Yamaha flutes. We discussed each specific part in detail. Mr. Tanaka gave us some hints like, shaping here might help it sound better across the entire range. The key points, which make up the embouchure hall and lip plate, etc., were recreated many, many times.
I've received wonderful feedback from people. My colleague, the principal clarinet in the orchestra, likes to tease me a little, and he says, such an expensive tone. It's a joke we have. But I appreciate it very much because I know that he means it in such a positive way. But that being said, I really believe that we as musicians sound the way we sound. And what we look for is the head joint that will allow us to sound the way we sound with the greatest ease. And that is the key. No single head joint can all of a sudden give you a beautiful tone. You have to have an idea of a beautiful tone in your head, but then the head joint allows you to achieve what it is that you hear. And that's what my K head joint does for me. Conductors always say, that's the most beautiful thing I've ever heard. Conductors always tell me, you are the greatest flute player in the whole wide world of all time. That's a joke. The Type K head joint is extremely flexible in the colors that you can produce, but it's also very responsive with the articulation throughout all the registers of the flute. And this is what's so important. Some head joints are very good in the low register, but then the high register is sacrificed, or the reverse can also happen. With my Type K head joint, I have a great confidence in the evenness of the articulation throughout all the registers of the instrument, as well as the variety of tone colors.
So now the concept of K head joint is it has rich and core sound quality in low to high register, all more even resonance, especially in higher register. It's not stuffy, more open sound. Response is more quick and clear. You can play more safely.
It's very flexible. In particular, the sound plays smoothly and freely. Or, put another way, you don't need to worry about your instrument. Every head joint has its own individual characteristics, which can sometimes make them difficult to control. Although these unique head joints do sound good, for musicians who want to play freely and smoothly and concentrate only on music, the Type K head joint offers greater capacity for expression in their playing.
That I can produce. And it's for these reasons that I enjoy playing it so much, and I think that other flute players will too.
Yamaha is always looking to the future of music and sound. Yamaha hopes more flute lovers have an opportunity to touch and try the new head joint.
The new Type K head joint possesses a new character that Yamaha head joints have never had before. We hope you will try it soon.